Hello and welcome to this episode of The Inner Estate with your host, Bridget Stuart. Our guest today is Athena Brownson. Athena, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. Love your podcast, and I think we're going to have some fun.
I think so too, because you are someone who has overcome challenges, created challenges for yourself to overcome, to grow.
Indeed.
And, there's just a lot of things you can share that I know are going to inspire others to get over their obstacles or whatever they're facing. So I'm excited to jump into this conversation with you. And to give everyone a point of reference, not only are you a realtor in Colorado, Denver, Breckenridge, the whole area there, you also are a former professional skier. And
Yes.
you have exciting things in your background that have led you to where you are today. If I may jump ahead, you also have overcome significant health challenges and physical challenges. And I want you to share that story as well. So when you think about all of that, I know I lumped a lot of your history into that one bit. What are you most passionate about sharing with everyone today?
Wow. And thank you for that. It has been, I like to say I've had many lives at this point because
Hmm.
it feels like many iterations of self. And the thing I'm most passionate about sharing is honestly, the last 10 years of my life looked like fighting for my life every single day, barely being able to get out of bed, barely being able to function, but having a business that I loved and was very dedicated to keep me going. And I think so often when we encounter challenges and adversity in life, it can be very paralyzing. And
Right.
when we're in the challenge, when we're in the adversity, it can be really easy to get stuck in the mud. But when you look back at life, you recognize very quickly that the most growth and the most incredible pieces of life did not come from easy sailing. It
That's right.
came from the greatest challenges that you overcame.
Right.
And if we can keep that mindset that, yes, although we may be going through something that feels like it's the end of the world or the end of life or whatever it may be, understanding that there's a greater purpose for that because it will serve us in the future. And I think that's something I really did not recognize until years into being very, very sick. And once that shifted for me, it created a new purpose. And that purpose is how do I help other people get through whatever challenges, be it health challenges, marriage challenges, whatever I can assist with, and just being an ear of someone that will listen to them. That's what I want to be. So I'd say that's what I've learned.
Well, it's really cool. And when I think about one other challenge, I think you could assist people with making a huge career change. Like, talk about
Yeah.
an industry shift,
Thank
going from being a professional skier and then now you are a very successful realtor.
you.
That is another
Yeah.
major change that a lot of people may dream about and they don't pursue, or they may be thrust into because their previous career may have ended not of their own volition.
Yeah.
And how do you pick yourself up and find that passion and the joy that you may have had in your other career and bring it to your new career? When I think about what you've overcome, jumping back to the physical side, so
Mhm.
it sounds like you were dealing with a chronic situation for an extended period of time. Did that start while you were skiing or did it start after you had stopped skiing? And I'm sure you still ski. I mean, professionally, competitively.
Professionally, no.
Mhm.
But when I was a skier, the only ailments I faced were broken bones and blown out knees. I did go
Right.
through 9 knee surgeries. I broke my neck a couple of times. I broke every bone you could imagine, but that was
Hold
par for
on.
the
I need to
course.
stop you there for a second. Anyone listening to this podcast, did you hear how casually she said, I broke my neck a couple of times? Okay. The next
Drop
time I
the mic.
complain about, oh, my ankle hurts, I'm going to remember you saying that. Sorry to interrupt, but keep going.
No, but that was par for course. It
Hmm.
was part of my sport. You knew going in that there was going to be injuries that occurred because we're throwing ourselves off of 100-foot jumps, doing tricks and expecting it to go well always. It
Right.
doesn't go well always.
No.
But skiing taught me so many incredible lessons that I've brought later into my life, and we can
Mhm.
talk about that further. But honestly, when I did have to quit skiing, it was not of my own volition. It
Mhm.
was my knee doctor looking at me and I was age, almost 24 years old, so still very young. And he
Right.
said, "Look, Athena, if you blow another knee, you're going to need a knee replacement, well before the age of 30." And that was the first kind of real reality check that, hey, what I'm doing to my body right now is something that is going to stick with me if I don't take care of myself. But
Right.
in the same token, I was an extremely healthy young professional athlete. And when I retired from skiing, I like to say retired gracefully, hung up the boots. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I think when we have these moments, it creates identity crisis because
Mhm.
we're so culturally taught that life looks, very linear. You do this and then you find what you're
Then you
good
do
at and
this.
you stick with that and you do that
Yeah.
and you get married and all of a
Right.
sudden, that linear timeline faded away, and I have no idea what I wanna do with my
Mhm.
life, and it took me a very long time to figure that out, but what I really recognized was that I had intertwined what I did with who I was
Right.
so much that I didn't know who I was as a human. I thought I was just a professional athlete. I was a skier. So who was I apart from that? And I think anyone going through that shift in their life when it's coming to, I have to change careers or maybe I want to change careers but I'm
Right.
afraid to do so. It's understandable because it is an identity shift, but I think it also lends us the opportunity to really look within and find out what it is that our strengths are, what it is that we're passionate about, what we like doing. And for me, it really was okay. I know that I love homes. I was studying to be an interior designer.
Mhm.
My dad was actually a developer. And because of that, I wanted nothing to do with real estate, to be completely honest. I didn't want to do what my father did. I
Right.
associated being in real estate with just being on job sites that were cold. I grew up in Breckenridge, Colorado, and he
Mhm.
was always dragging me to his projects, but real estate was never something on my radar. But again, I knew that I loved homes. I loved people. People filled me up. They made me feel light.
Right.
And I love design. So I had a girlfriend that looked at me and said, "Athena, I don't know why you haven't considered real estate, but this is something you need to put some serious thought into." That I look at that day and it changed my life. As coaches always says to me, "Athena, you never know the day that you're going to wake up and you're going to meet the person or have the conversation or be in the situation that changes your life forever."
That's right.
I think waking up with that mentality and understanding that even if it doesn't feel like it's going to be a good day, or even if you're struggling, that, hey, one interaction that I have might have the potential to completely change my life. And that conversation completely changed my life.
That's great. That's really exciting. So was that you retired
Yeah.
from skiing, was real estate your next major career? Like, or was there
Yeah.
anything in between?
I worked as an interior designer. I did an internship while I was finishing college, and then I worked as an interior designer for about a year. So it was a very quick stint. And then
Mhm.
I jumped right into real estate. And, when I was about 2 years into real estate, that's when my chronic health issues really started to
Okay.
unfold, unfortunately. So they were completely separate from skiing,
Right.
but at some point in the past, 2 decades, I was bit by a tick and I contracted Lyme disease. I've
Mhm.
never even seen a tick. I have no idea where or when I got bit. But this one little bite that happened sometime in my past bared its ugly face because I went in for a second neck surgery, and basically, when your immune system is weakened, when your immune system's compromised, chronic Lyme disease has the opportunity to kind of take over your
Take
body.
hold. Right.
Yep. And that's what it did. So I was recovering from neck surgery and started experiencing all these really strange ailments.
Mhm.
And I was so lucky, probably the luckiest, sick person imaginable. I had a doctor that was very familiar with Lyme disease, and
Thank goodness.
which usually doesn't happen, you know? People go decades
Right.
without
Without
understanding
the
why they're so
accurate
sick.
diagnosis. Right.
Yeah, and the first person I saw said, "I think we should test you," and sure, I thought he was completely bananas. I was like,
Mhm.
I don't even know what a tick is, like,
Right.
no, there's no way." And sure enough, it was like every strand of Lyme you could imagine with different co-infections, and suddenly it became very clear why my body was starting to go from being a very strong, healthy professional athlete to barely being able to get out of bed in the morning and forcing myself to get through very basic tasks like taking a shower and getting
Right.
myself to the car. It started to make sense. And that started me on a journey that nothing ever could have prepared me for, but a journey that nothing could replace because it has taught me so much about who I am as an individual. And I don't know that I would have learned these life lessons had I not gotten sick, unfortunately.
So, how I'm sure anyone listening, they want to jump to the end. Are you doing well today?
I'm so excited to say this is the first year, I'd say the last 6 months, I have turned such a big corner. After literally
Fantastic.
9 years of treatment, I've turned a corner. I'm starting to get so much better. I still get 4 plasma transfusions a month,
Hmm.
which is very invasive. But I'm able to get up in the morning. I'm able
That's
to
great.
function normally. It's so exciting.
Now, by the way, too, from what I've believed, correct me where I'm wrong, while facing and handling your chronic illness, you also were supporting and developing your real estate business and giving world class, excellent service to your clients and creating and forging relationships with your colleagues. So you were
Indeed.
doing both. And I know I'm a numbers nerd. I looked at the
Yeah.
numbers and you've built a really great business, well reviewed, and your clients feel taken care of, heard, supported, and your negotiating skills apparently are top notch, right? So you were
Thank you.
doing this while you were also facing years of a chronic illness.
Yeah, and thank you for recognizing that. I like to think that real estate became my why because
Hmm.
I'm a very relational person. I do well when I'm with people and when I'm serving others. And real estate truly became like my guiding light of a reason to get up every day. And when you have a reason to continue forward, I really think that it puts you in a headspace that allows you to keep fighting. If I
Right.
was told so many times, Athena, you can stay at home, go on disability and just rest. And my head doctor looked at me and he knew my background. He knew that I was a competitive athlete, that
Right.
I needed something to hold on to. And
Hmm.
he said, Athena, I think that would be the most detrimental thing to your health because you need to be keeping yourself active and your mind, busy, and you need to be with other people.
Yes.
But it also, as an only child and a professional skier, both one man sports, I would say,
Right.
I
Right.
did not know the art of delegation. When I began real estate, was under the impression that I could get everything done at a top level by myself.
Right.
And, it was a very arrogant thing to think.
And a
And really, it was more
common
ignorant.
misconception.
Exactly. And what I quickly realized when I did get sick was that there was absolutely no way that I could get everything done by myself, let alone do everything well.
That's
And
right.
I started breaking it down into first understanding how many good hours in a day was I going to get, even if that meant working from the couch. How productive can I be? How well is my mind working? And what am I able to accomplish? And what are my strengths? What are the things that I'm really good at, that I'm passionate about? It's those client touches. It's making sure that they get that white glove service. It's making
Right.
sure that I'm negotiating as well as I can for them. And then what are the things that are not my forte? What are the
Hmm.
things that maybe I can delegate off. And what a coach really helped me recognize at the time, because coaching has been something that I've really held on to. As a skier, my coaches were my world.
Right.
They said jump, I said how high.
That's right.
And I've
And how
taken the
many
same
times?
thing. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. How can I do it better? And that's something I've taken into real estate. I've never not had coaches throughout my career. And a coach said to me, Athena, you have to recognize that when you're trying to do everything, you're actually robbing someone of the opportunity to do what it is that they're best at and to
Yes.
empower someone to do what they love to do. So instead of trying to do everything on your own, figure out what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and then find someone that complements you well so that your weaknesses are their strengths. And after a couple of very rough hires, I definitely learned the hard way how to hire. And there is such an art to it. But I found the most incredible team. And I found a team that supports me through thick and thin, that know my health battles, that knows what I'm really good at and knows what I'm not very good at.
Right.
That, companionship and being able to delegate really, really allowed me to not overextend myself, because I have to be and still today, I have to be very careful about how I expend my energy, because it isn't unlimited. There were years where I was so sensitive to electronics, for instance. I had an EMF sensitivity, it's called electromagnetic frequency. So every time I would pick up my phone or get on the computer, I would get such bad electrical burns on my hands and my chest
Wow.
that I would bleed. So there was a
Wow.
point where I had to move into an RV that wasn't connected to any electricity, no Wi-Fi. And when I did need to use my computer, I would need to put on lead gloves and a lead blanket and go somewhere with internet. So it got that extreme. It got to the
Wow.
point of there were days, weeks that I couldn't touch my computer. And as a real estate agent, that's very
We need our
challenging.
computers. Yes.
Yes. So,
They're
delegation is
quintessential
life-saving. Yeah, they're
tools
attached to us.
in what we do. Yes.
Completely. But it became being able to rely on my team became something that was pivotal to my ability to continue forward. And I
What
don't
stands
wish
out
that
to
on
me from that?
anyone. Yeah,
You figured it out.
I
You
did.
figured it out and nothing stopped you. If you're like, the wiring in my walls is impacting my health, I'll get in an RV. I won't plug in.
So true.
I don't know what, if you ran a generator, whatever, but you figured it
Yeah.
out and you figured out how to have leverage that would make it happen. An interesting thing, I hadn't thought about this in years, in our industry, there are still some very successful agents that are in their 70s. And actually, I know a few that are in their 80s. I won't say any names because they don't appear to be in their 80s. And they're not necessarily good with technology at all,
Yeah.
but they've done the same thing. They're so good with people and they're so knowledgeable about properties and how
Yeah.
to take the words out of someone's mouth and turn that into a door that you're walking through, that they keep doing that. And as you said, they figured out what they're good at
Mhm.
and how they can have the biggest impact, and they have success through others by having leverage of people doing. But
Exactly.
yeah,
And you
you've
know what?
figured it out.
I did. I figured it out. And I think that when you have something that you love, you have something that, you don't want to let your clients down, because
Right.
you want them to we have a very important role in people's lives. I
Hmm.
mean, this is their home, this is their safe space, this is
Right.
the biggest investment that they make, buying or selling their biggest investment. So we have to take it very
Very
seriously.
seriously.
And that became my why. And I think that relational piece is something that is so important now more than ever, as we are becoming inundated with AI and we have so many, tools at our disposal, that the human relationship is not something that can be replaced. The
That's right.
human relationship is something that we need to foster, because that is something that can't be taken over by AI.
Right.
And it kind of yes, we have all this amazing technology and these technological advances, but we need to lean into relationship now more than ever. And that's exactly what I had to do, was to be really upfront and honest with my clients about what it is that I was going through, because there were going to be days where I needed my business partner to show up for me if I wasn't able to, or if
Right.
I was in the hospital. And so I have a very transparent relationship with my clients. But, that leaning into relationship and really, really fostering a relationship built on trust and authenticity, I think is something that's going to differentiate the agents that continue to thrive and the
I
agents that
agree.
really struggle.
I agree. And I believe in our industry, I believe that is already happening.
I do. I
It's
completely agree. It's scary.
any,
I mean,
yeah. Any of our colleagues are like, you know what I noticed? You're late to the game because it started.
yeah,
It has already begun.
big
But
time.
I just am, it's fascinating to me. And I'm thinking back to 23, 24-year-old Athena, and having that had to be a very intense conversation with your doctor about your knees. And if you have
Yeah.
one more, you're going to need that new. I'm in the several broken necks. I would imagine you probably at the time thought, wow, this is, one of the hardest decisions I have to make and one of the biggest things to overcome. Not knowing what was going to be a few years down the road. And I just think, what skills did you learn in handling that disappointment, difficulty, physical pain?
Yeah.
I believe it probably helped you along with that competitive side, because you probably what I actually have the privilege of coaching a former professional skier
Oh,
out of Sun
neat.
Valley who's in real estate. And I keep thinking about him while we're talking.
Oh,
But
small world.
so you like went through the disappointment of the knee
Yeah.
situation, but you also learned as a skier, because the difference in first place and seventh place in skiing can be less than a
Yeah.
nanosecond, whatever, you can be that
Literally.
depending on what you're doing. It can be so subtle. So I know that while you were skiing, you were creatively thinking of solutions to get better and better and better. And look how that now served you in an entirely different capacity,
Man, yes.
handling this, not giving up, getting creative, and like figuring the out.
Yeah.
You figured it out.
And that is something I think about all the time. And I really, I need to contact a lot of my ski coaches and just thank them for being so tough on me, because honestly, that was the greatest gift anyone could have given me. When I did get injured and throughout my career before the end, there was never an option to have a victim mentality, honestly. It
Good.
was, how do I get myself up and how do I get stronger so that I can be better when I get back to snow? What is my path that I need to take to get back to where I want to be? And I think, with injury, I was always encountering, okay, if I do A, B, C, and D, then I'm going to get better and
Hmm.
I'm going to come back stronger. And that is, it taught me resilience. It taught me that, you know, as corny as it is, what's repped is kept. It
Right.
showed me that if I put the work in, that the outcome was going to be positive. And if I
Right.
didn't put the work in, that the outcome was not going to be positive. But when I was faced with, okay, Athena, like, you really need to think about whether you're going to keep doing this or not, it had never been a thought in my mind that which, I knew the day would come eventually, but I thought that I would just age out of skiing and kind of bow out
Right.
gracefully.
Right.
And when it came to the decision of, do I continue doing this or not, it was one of the most challenging decisions I ever had to make, because it was my life force. It was who I
Right.
was. But I also, and I'm curious because my knee doctor is Lindsey Vaughn's knee doctor too. So
Oh,
I want to
wow.
know what he tells her, because she keeps
Right. Right.
getting back up and going.
Right.
But the seriousness in his voice showed me that this was something that I needed to listen to, and
Right.
that there wasn't really an option there. And I recognized that my life was never going to look the same, but I recognized that I needed to find something that I could put my passion into, something that I could, put everything I had in and work really hard and have a great output from it. And what I wasn't getting from interior design was I was getting a ceiling, I could work
Mhm.
as hard as I wanted, but there was only so far I could take it. And I think as an athlete, I really gravitated towards being an entrepreneur because I think athletics and entrepreneurship have so much in common.
Agreed.
And in those skill sets that I learned from my coaches and from, needing to retire, of grit and resilience and discipline and accountability, are things that with and even just the ability to visualize, I was taught at such a young age that if I could land a trick in my head, if I could visualize myself doing something, that I could land it on snow. Because with skiing, you really don't get many places to try things that are not on snow, other than
Right.
maybe a trampoline or, off of jumps into water, but that was very rare. So I learned these tools of visualization that have carried me through the rest of my life so far. And I started to recognize what was missing from my life when I had to stop skiing. I started to recognize what wasn't working, honestly. And because I didn't know what it was that was going to work, I was just, trying as many things as I could. And
Right.
interior design felt like a good fit. But when I started to recognize that I needed to be responsible for my own success, that's when the real discipline came into play. That's when keeping myself accountable, because the only person I was going to let down was myself if I didn't put that time in.
Right.
So I think athletics teach us such incredible life lessons that we take into everything we do. I think about it every day in the way that I'm approaching every activity. And you would never go to the top of a ski run and think, okay, I'm just going to get down this. Like I'm not going to
Right.
put my all into it, because that's when you get hurt.
Yeah, you don't go up there and be like, "Well, let's just see what happens today."
Exactly. So why would I wing it with how I'm
Right.
scheduling my day or preparing myself for a listing presentation or for a buyer appointment? We can't just show up and expect everything to go great. And sometimes it might, but you get greatness comes through repetition, and it
Yes, it
comes
does.
through continuous practice and practice and practice and preparation. And if we're not giving ourselves those opportunities to practice and to prepare, then we're really doing ourselves and our clients a disservice. But again,
Especially the
that's not
clients. Yeah.
right. Exactly. You don't want to take someone's biggest asset, the
Right.
biggest purchase they're going to make, and just wing it.
Yeah.
But
Let me
yet,
see
that's
how my
something
mood
that's so
is
common.
today.
Yeah.
If I'm in
Do
the
I
right
feel like
mood,
it?
then maybe I'll go shoe shop. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
agree with you entirely. Yes.
It's something to think about, because it does get difficult in real estate when you
It
don't have
does.
someone telling you how to spend every hour of your day. And it's very difficult to figure out what works for you, because what works for me might not work for the next person and the next
That's right.
person. It's really figuring out, okay, again, what are my strengths? How do I need to be spending my time so that I'm amplifying those strengths? And then how am I going to create disciplines within my own life so that I am utilizing my time to be the biggest asset for conducting what I'm really good at?
Right.
And it's so easy to get distracted by all of the things that
All the
need to be
stuff.
done all the time and all of the
Right.
phone calls that we're getting. You and I are both putting our phone on do not disturb before we
That's
started,
right.
because
That's exactly right.
I guarantee when we get off, our phones are gonna have 10 million things. And
Right.
being able to have the discipline, or at least the knowing that, okay, these are my non-negotiables of what I have to get done and how I need to show up in order to get these things done. And then after, I will give myself this amount of time to deal with A, B, and C, and I'm
Mhm.
gonna delegate D, E, and F because I don't
Yes.
have time for them. And that's what skiing taught me
Well,
on a very broad level.
and I just want to add on that to the D, E, and F. Not only what you don't have time for, but there's people out there that do it better than you and I ever
Oh,
would. So let's allow
100%.
the experts that do it so well and do it at a high level. Let's allow them and empower them to do it, which
Yeah.
then benefits us and the clients.
I
And
mean,
frankly, our colleague agents on the other side, it benefits everyone when the expert is handling the things
that's
they're really good
why
at.
we have transaction coordinators.
Yes.
I look at my operations manager and the amount that she handles on a day-to-day basis that I never in my wildest dreams could figure out even half of.
Right.
Couldn't run my business without her. And
Mhm.
I'm so grateful to have people that are so talented at the things that I have no talent towards. And I think it's
Right.
really important to recognize what we do not have talent at. I
Mhm.
mean, it's just as important as knowing what you are good at.
Right.
How are we going to know where our blind spots are, where our weaknesses are, if we don't really do some self-evaluation? And it's not fun to do. It's not easy to
No.
do necessarily. But when you do get into that flow of operating from a place where, you're in an abundant mindset because you want to give other people the opportunity to thrive. You want to give your clients the best service by showing up as your best and not trying to juggle 10 different balls.
Right.
That's where your business gets fun and burnout becomes much less prevalent, I think.
I agree. I agree. And overall, your client experience is also going to be better.
Yes.
Yeah.
So much better. I mean, my client experience since I brought a team under me I did a great job for a long time at juggling too much, for sure. But the overall flow of every transaction and far past the transaction, making sure we don't miss a birthday or a home anniversary or a
Mm,
personal anniversary. These are things that I could never in a million years handle by myself. And how are you supposed to stay in relationship with so many people if you're trying to do everything yourself? You
that's right.
can't. And that's when business becomes very transactional. And I think most of us that are probably listening, the idea of having a transactional business is the antithesis of anything we would ever want.
I agree. Yeah. I don't think a lot of churn and burners are listening to you and I
Probably
have a
not.
conversation. Yeah.
Probably not.
Right. But it's funny, the Mo Anderson is an icon overall in the real estate industry. She calls it success through others.
Yes.
So, like if you just can stop yourself, because so many agents, I know you'll probably have people pop to mind when I say it. They feel it has to be me. I have to do all of it. It all has to be me. And everyone says that it must be me, 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 me. And I believe in their hearts, they think they're making a really great choice, but it does not have to be you. It has to be
That was
you in the
me.
key elements where you have skill, prowess, and you will protect and fight for the clients. If
Yes.
it's uploading a scan into a software, that doesn't have to be you. That can be somebody else.
And I was that control freak for most of my life. I was so used to being a perfectionist at everything that I
Hmm.
did and getting everything done myself and having control over it. That releasing control, it can be really scary. And
Yes.
I would say to anyone out there struggling with this, it's like, start with offloading one thing at a time. If whether you're hiring a VA or a part-time assistant or
That's right.
whatever it is, it's like take one thing off your plate at a time. Don't try and do everything at once because you're gonna
Right.
have a nervous
Freak
breakdown.
out. Right.
But we don't have the capacity to give our clients what we need if we're doing everything. And I
Right.
learned that, unfortunately, I had to learn that when I became very ill,
Hmm.
but it also taught me that I needed to do that in order for self-preservation and for my
Right.
clients to have the best representation possible. It couldn't just be me. And I believe that all of our businesses thrive so much better. Our deals go so much smoother. Everything in the world of real estate revolves much cleaner when we have a team around us supporting us so that we're not showing up, burnt out, grumpy,
Right.
fighting with the other agent. Like
Right.
that's the last thing that we need to be happening through this
Right.
transaction. It's already emotional enough. So how can we take care of ourselves in order to not add emotion to the table, basically?
Well, I want to jump back to earlier in the conversation when you mentioned that your father was a developer and that you grew up with with the view and experience that only the children of developers, realtors, and maybe closing attorneys experience. Lenders, I guess lenders too,
Mhm.
similar. And you were thinking to yourself as you grew up that you did not want to get into the world of real estate. How much of an issue was that for you when you first started looking at it and saying, yeah, this seems appealing? Was there any part of you that was still hesitant because of what it was like when you were a child?
Oh my
And how big
goodness.
a part, like, did your father play a part in reaching any of those decisions?
Yeah, so again, not only did I have this mentality that like I didn't want to do what my dad did, but I also had a mentality that realtors were like corny car salesmen. And
Mhm.
there were more real estate offices in my small town than there were t-shirt shops. And I'm in a tourist town. So the number of t-shirt shops that we have is exponential. And we have
Right.
more real estate offices than that. So I had such a negative view of real estate. And when my girlfriend initially said to me, Athena, you love homes, you love people, you love design. What are you doing? She said, look, at least talk to the owner of my company. I think you guys are really going to be a good fit. He's an incredible human being. Just sit down and have lunch with him and see what he has to say about real estate. And then you can, check it off the list if it's not for you.
Right.
So I begrudgingly set this lunch up with the owner of her company. And again, that was a day that changed my life because I went in convinced that nothing could convince me that I would get into real estate. I was very set that real estate was transactional. It wasn't, a relationship business. It was slimy. I just had negative connotations. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people do, and it's couldn't
Hmm.
be further from the truth, but I sat down with the owner of her company, who is to this day my greatest mentor. He completely changed my life. He, in a one lunchtime, explained to me what relationship based business was and
Hmm.
how realtors have the ability to make such an incredible, impermeable mark in people's lives.
Right.
Genuinely, I could tell it meant every word he was saying about how passionate he was about taking people through the journey of finding their first home or their third home or their sixth investment property or whatever it may be, because he cared so much about the people that he was serving.
Hmm.
And I'm someone that tends to make decisions very quickly if I am going to make a decision. And by the
Right.
end of that lunch, I had already planned how I was going to quit my job, when I was going to start real estate school, and the next day I went in and I put in my notice. Ended up being a week notice, and I worked there for a week, and then I immediately had my last knee surgery. And while I was recovering from knee surgery, I studied around the clock nonstop to get my
Hmm.
license. And that was, almost 12 years ago now. And it was the best decision I ever made. So he single handedly, not anything to do with my father, not anything to do with anyone else, quite, in fact, that he single handedly took me from being a complete realtor hater to there's nothing that
This
I
is
would
what I'm
love
going to do.
more. Yeah.
Right.
We can be impactful to people.
Well, you know what? That to me shows you and I were talking before we started the podcast that you have an approach to life overall of being what I would call education based and curious. So you were
Very much
able,
so.
with that story you just shared, you were able to, even though they were still lingering in your mind, you set your ego aside and you were open and willing to listen to another perspective. And
And
then you were able to reach the
coaching,
decisions and move ahead.
I think coaching really teaches that. And
Yeah.
because it shows us that we don't know everything, but there are ways to learn a good amount of things. And there are a lot of people that know things that we don't know.
We don't know.
we don't know, again, what our own blind spots are if we don't have
Right.
someone that can help point them out for us. And that's exactly what he did, is he showed me a completely different view of something that I thought I knew everything about,
Right, right.
and I didn't know anything.
So what did your dad say when you were like, "Hey, guess what?"
Both my dad and my mom were thrilled.
Good, I'm sure they are.
And it's something today, I laugh so much because my dad and I now develop properties together. And
Nice.
did I ever in a million years think that would be my future? No,
No.
I did not. But it has been something that we're about to start our second big project together. And it is something that I cherish so much because I have the opportunity to build a closer, stronger relationship with my dad while learning his expertise. And he's been doing this for 45 years. He
Right.
knows the ins and outs of developing better than anyone I know. And to be
Mhm.
able to share this time with him is it really is full circle. But my parents couldn't have been more thrilled. My
Oh,
mom
yeah.
always did the interior design for my dad's projects. She's incredible artist and very
Mhm.
creative. And I'm definitely like a split between the two because I love the creative aspect of it, but I love the more technical side of it and
Right.
understanding how things are built and how we can do it efficiently and effectively and actually create a product that is going to hold up and be, a really solid home for someone
Mhm.
to spend their life in. And I think the principles that he has developed throughout his career as a developer, I never recognized as a young person. I never recognized, the man behind the guy that was taking me to job sites and
Right.
dragging me to different showrooms and architects meetings. And I
Right.
never recognized the skill set that he held and just how amazing he is at it. And now to be able to be in a completely different side of it and share that with him and learn has been something, again, mentorship. Oftentimes it's difficult to have a parent as a mentor.
Yes.
I think I've grown up enough that it's a joy now and it's something I'm very excited about.
Well, I'm
How
gonna
to
speak on your dad's behalf. I'm sure he's
Please do.
also really enjoying it and very thrilled.
Thank you. It's really special. Again, never in a million years would I have expected to be doing this. And
Right.
now I couldn't imagine my life or business without the development aspect because
Mhm.
it is something that also gives me a creative outlet
The
to
creative
be.
outlet, that's right.
I need it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really special.
I think that is incredible, and again, I don't know your parents. As a parent of adults, they would have been proud of you either way, but this, I agree, he probably is surprised and is enjoying it as well.
Yeah, and
And
I
your
think
mom
they get
too.
it too. They
Yeah.
understand real estate. They understand, that there's gonna be really good months and there's gonna be months where I call them and I'm like, my head's on fire and
Right.
I think the world is ending and,
Right.
but they get that. And
Right.
I'm so grateful for that because they really have been an amazing support system. And I think we all need that in this vicious game of real estate that we're in.
Right. So what is next for you? You mentioned that after you retired from skiing, that you started noticing some areas in your life or in your own self that were sort of missing or maybe wanted or needed attention. Is there anything else that you're developing now? Like what's next for you?
Yeah. I'm first of all constantly like doing internal self-work. I think that it's a never-ending journey to really understand how to regulate ourselves and especially battling chronic illness. I've had a lot of nervous system dysregulation and had a tendency to get really anxious about really small things and luckily, my team was really good at helping me through those moments. But I do a lot of neurofeedback and
Okay.
different modalities to really help heal my brain and create healthy new neural pathways so that I'm really approaching everything from an abundance mindset instead of kind of that survival instinct that I've been
Right.
stuck in for 10 years.
Right.
it's interesting when you start to come out of that and recognize that, oh yeah, my computer's not going to shock me and I'm not going to bleed. If I pick up my phone, it's not going to make my hands have electrical burns in it. These are all
Right.
things that I've had to retrain myself. But what I recognize the most is that I need to be train others. Like I need to be the mentor that my mentors have been for me. And that's something that I haven't had the bandwidth to do for 10 years. I was barely able to get myself through the day, let alone help someone else
Right.
to really learn the business. And so I'll definitely be growing my team. I
Hmm.
have no plans of making a huge mega team, but if I can take an agent or two at a time and really help cultivate a successful business for them and find a joyful business, then I know that would be really fulfilling. Development is something like we've talked about, I'm extremely passionate about. So not only working on my own projects, but I'm partnering with a couple of different developer builders and representing them with their
Great.
projects and being a part of it from dirt to completion,
Hmm.
choosing finishes, working with the architects, really, really being hands on is something that I love doing. And then finally, like I have not been able to travel in a decade. And when I was a pro skier, I was on snow 300 days a year. And
Hmm.
that meant I was, everywhere in the world all
Right.
year round,
You were traveling to the snow.
I was following the snow, down
Hmm.
to the southern hemisphere in Chile and Argentina and New Zealand and up to Canada. And I made my rounds. I lived in Germany. I really, really, really miss travel. And it's something that was such a huge part of my life that kind of got ripped away because I couldn't go inside of an airplane because it was so electric that it gave me muscle convulsions, quite literally. So I am really excited to travel again. I think this year
Good.
is going to be my first time getting on a flight longer than like 2 hours. So that brings me a lot of joy and
I'm really excited to hear that.
is a good part of the healing process.
Have you been to all the continents? Did you ever go down to Antarctica when you were down?
I have not been to Antarctica yet,
Is that
but
the last one?
it is.
All
Yes.
right.
And will I do it? I don't know, but
Right.
you
Not
know,
everyone, it's not an overly appealing trip when you start
yeah.
looking into it.
I have a
Yeah.
friend that just did a 7 marathons in 7 continents in 7 days. And
Oh,
he went from Antarctica to Istanbul. And Istanbul, he was running in 116-degree heat. So he went from negative,
right.
40-degree temperatures and I was like, I just don't know if I have the desire to even go outside in that weather and let alone run a
I do not
marathon.
have the desire to do that. I can say it. Going out in 116, I actually do that. I live in Paradise
Yeah,
Valley, Arizona. So during the
you
summer, I'll
do.
do that, but I'm not running a marathon. I'm not even
Right?
running to
That's a different breed
get to
of
my
human right
car.
there.
Yeah. So not in 116-degree weather. Well, I just wanted to thank you for sharing everything that you've shared. This has been, which it's still ongoing, a remarkable journey. And I understand how you said you feel like you have multiple iterations of your life so far, and you're not even that old yet, to have lived all the lives and have a retirement already. And I
Yeah.
still am not quite over the, a few broken necks. So just I wanted to thank you for sharing all of that. If someone out there is facing an unexpected retirement or a career that they loved, pulled away for whatever reason, and they are feeling as if they've lost their why. Is there one practical tip you could give them to just move the needle forward?
In life, we get so many more than one whys. So so we get to choose what the next chapter of our life is going to be, and we get to pick what that why is. Break it down to the very basics, figuring out what it is that you enjoy. You might have lost touch with that. A lot of times we do. What are your strengths? Maybe do some strength finders,
Hmm.
do a disc personality profile.
Right.
Really understand yourself and where your strengths lie. And then from there, understand what career path options you have. And I always do the heavy and light test. If something in my life makes me feel heavier, then it's probably not something I should be putting my energy towards. If something makes me feel lighter, then that's something I want to run towards. So when you're thinking about what the next move is, simply like sit on it, think about it. Does this make me feel heavy or does this make me feel light? And just run towards anything that makes you feel light because I guarantee your why is going to be within that.
That's incredible. I think that's just
That's a good
excellent
one.
advice. Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you for being our guest, Athena. I could talk
Thank
to you for
you.
hours.
Same.
Also, I would love to invite you to come back, and I'd like for you to come back after you've done some traveling and share
I'd
with everyone
love that.
how that's gone. If you're listening to the two of us on the podcast, I hope that you'll come back to the next episode of The Inner Estate. Athena, thank you so much for being our guest, and all of your contact information will be anywhere that you're consuming this podcast. So, Athena
Thank you
Brownson,
so much. You're
thank you.
amazing.
You are too. You're an inspiration.